ago, just about now, when the first airplane struck the World Trade Center, which began the realization of this barbaric attack against us by the Al-Qaeda forces. And little did we know at that moment, but we had a certain amount of anxiety that residents of our communities would have lost their lives. Unfortunately, as we all know, there are many of us who know the families of the people who died. And I would like to reverently name the people who lost their lives last year at the World Trade Center. Helen Bevelovsky, Douglas G. Karpolov, Frank J. Kistner, John J. McErlane Jr., John F. Swain, John A. Rio, J. Howard Bolton Jr., Edward H. Luckett, Christopher T. Orlowitz, Maurice P. Kelly, Helen Crosland Kittle, Patricia Helen Kittle. Thank you all very much for coming. I think the less said, the better.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage with the grapes of wrath restored. He has loosed the flame of lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Provided us in the prison camps with all of our recreational material and did a wonderful job under very difficult circumstances. And in that book was a book that he had done of his photographs along with drawings and sketches that were done by a guy named Ross Greening, who had actually been in the same prisoner of war camp that I was in. And I knew Russ from that prisoner of war camp. So then, in reading one of the issues of the publication, I came across the fact that Angelo's pictures, after being exhibited at the Andersonville Historic Site, which is in Andersonville, Georgia, which is maintained by the Parks Department through the Department of the Interior. And then a little later than that, I found out that they had made a traveling exhibition of that work. So it struck me that that might be an interesting thing to bring to Mamaroneck. So I got in touch with Angelo, I got in touch with the Park Service, and lo and behold, it opens here on Sunday, March 22. It'll be here, April 22. It'll be here through at least the end of May and possibly longer. It's a terrific exhibit, and sitting to my right is Mr. Angelo Spinelli. Angelo?
My name is Angelo Spinelli. I was drafted in 1941, and I went into the Signal Corps. It was a problem trying to get into the photographic branch, but I worked quite a bit in order to get myself into the photographic branch of the Signal Corps. I went to the school that they have for photographers, and then we were assigned, after finishing the courses, I was assigned to the 162nd Signal Photo Company, which was its headquarters in Little Rock, Arkansas. We stayed there for a period of several months, going from one city to another for doing public relation work till it finally was time to go overseas. We were shipped to New York, and we were on the Queen Mary going to England. We stayed in England and then to Scotland. Finally, we boarded the ship, a New Zealand ship, Awatea, and we made the initial invasion in Africa on November 8th, 1942. We were there till the day I was captured, doing photographic work for the U.S. government. And on March 14th, that was the day I was captured, and it's a long story the way I got captured. I was taking pictures in the morning, and as time went on, I was finished all my photographic work, and I didn't have no more pictures or film to take pictures. But what happened, the American Army got a hold of a German patrol, and the company I was with decided, since I had nothing to do, I would be glad to take these 10 or 11 Germans back to Command A for interrogation. So I volunteered to take them. So the lieutenant gave me a driver plus 2 guards to take these German prisoners to the American lines for interrogation. In a period of time from the morning on till the afternoon, the combat command there was moving from one place to another, and we lost our directions. Before we know, we were caught in the field of battle. And what we did, we got off our vehicles and lie down behind a mound with these German prisoners, and we're watching as the battle was going on. As it approached in the latter part of the afternoon, the German army with their tanks were advancing and got to the point where they disbanded most of our vehicles, and there was a complete line of German tanks that came to us. And no sooner did the German tanks come to us, a German sergeant in charge, he was very tickled pink that now what happened, we became their prisoners. It was Rommel's troops that was there. But during the time that, in my estimation, very important, I was very kind to the German prisoners. Being a souvenir hero, I bartered with them for things of souvenirs, which I treated them well, gave them cigarettes and all. and I was able to converse with the German sergeant there. He says, "Don't worry, if it's the Germans, you'll be well taken care of." And I told him, if it's the Americans, you have nothing to worry, you'll be well taken care of. So when there were nothing else but German tanks around us, and we had no alternative but they disarmed us, and we became their prisoners. What they did for us was marvelous. Myself with my driver, Michael Alfonsi, with the two guards, rather than walk back to Algiers from the Kasserine Pass, we rode all the way with the Americans back to what they called Sebastianville. There was a German interrogation camp, and they kept us there. They had bunks ready for us, a room where they put us. They fed us in the morning, fed us at lunch, fed us in the evening, and we had the fear that the morning would be the day of execution. Fortunate for us, we were not executed, and as the days went by, after 3-4 days, they finally put us, gave us transportation back to the schoolhouse where all the Americans that were captured were brought there. What they did do then, they put us on an airplane near Algiers. They flew us to Sicily. From Sicily, we went to Italy. They refueled in Sicily. We went to Italy, and right outside of Naples was where they were gathering all these American prisoners. We stayed there a few days, and after a few days, they put us in boxcars and drove us to Italy, to Switzerland, and we finally landed on Stalag 7A, that was near Munich. We stayed there for about a month till they opened up a new camp strictly for sort of the Americans. This was Furstenberg on the Oder, and in Furstenberg on the Oder, we stayed there for a period over 2 years till we. But let me go back to what was going on in Stalag 3B. For the first 6 months at Stalag 3B, we were on a regular German ration, which was a slow starvation diet, waiting for the parcels, American parcels to come in. No sooner the American parcels came in 6 months later, in the month of August, we were captured on February 14th, 1943. When these American parcels came in, it was a godsend. That made us sustain, surviving. And in the American parcels, there were cigarettes plus food. I was a non-smoker, and being a non-smoker, I used my cigarettes for bartering. And I befriended a German guard to, if he would be kind enough, a German guard, if he would be kind enough, I'm looking for a camera. And it was difficult to befriend this German guard. He spoke that his family was all killed in Berlin, and he was a man in his 60s, and he was kind enough to secure a camera for me. It was a Voigtlander Besser that took 120 roll film. Now having a camera, and what I would like is, how could I get film? I paid 8 packs of cigarettes for this camera, and now I need film. I was able to get from the guard a roll of 120 film for 1 pack of cigarettes. After not knowing the various type of film that the Germans had, I didn't know the various speeds of the film. I made sure when this was strictly forbidden, and I made sure that whenever I took pictures, that no German ever saw me with the camera taking pictures. Well, the nicest part of this camera, it has a viewfinder that I can use at waist level, and I just look down and I could take the picture with at waist level. And that's how I used it, take the pictures. Now, once I got the film, now I want to see how well I can do with the pictures, if my exposure was correctly or overexposed, underexposed, and I could make the necessary correction in exposing the next shots. So in a period of 20 months, I managed to take pictures of life behind barbed wire, of the various activities, what the Americans were doing, whether we were playing ball, whether we were getting on a line to get food, water, whatever, every activity what that transpired. I managed to take pictures whenever I had the film, and as well of what was being transpired. What I did want, now that I got the film, I exposed the film, I want to see whether I overexposed, underexposed. I managed to get the guard to get the film processed for me. He took it to town, gave it to someone to process it. A day or two later, he would bring me the film with the pictures. So then I was able to see whether the pictures had proper exposure or not, and I compensated on the following shots what kind of pictures I was. And in a period of 20 months, I compiled a fantastic collection of activities that transpired in the camp. As well, we had shows. In the interim also, I was able to barter for a tripod, an 8-inch tripod that extended to 5 feet. And as far as taking indoor pictures, I exposed them as time shots in a period of 8 to 10 seconds, and asked the American POWs to hold their position for the period of 8 to 10 seconds, because I was shooting on the smallest opening with whatever lighting we had in that theater. And the pictures came out unbelievable. A real professional photographer, taking with all kinds of equipment, couldn't produce a better picture. So in a period of 20 months, there it was, I took all these various pictures and was able also to see that I could hide all my camera equipment with the film and the negatives, so that the various shakedowns we had, I made sure that I will not have those camera equipment or film in my possession. I managed to find and build a hiding place within the barrack, that any time there was any sort of a rumor that the Germans are coming for a shakedown, I got all my forbidden equipment and buried in the ground, and until the shakedown was over. Then I took them out of the ground because they would create mildew with the equipment as well as the foam. So I kept them away from the ground, and any time, regardless whether it's shakedown or not, I made sure they were unable to be caught with it. Now, in a period of time, in these 20 months that we were at Stalag 3B, which was Septermber on the Oder, I managed to amass a tremendous collection of pictures and made sure I maintained and kept the negatives with me at all times. And now it came to the day we have to evacuate because the Russians were coming. So now what happens now? What am I going to do? So I hid. I was caught with my barrack musette bag, where I was able to keep all my photo equipment, and on top of that, used to put the Red Cross processed food to hide what was in it. So we had it came the day that the Russians would come, and we have to evacuate and go on to Stalag 3A, which was in Luckenwalde, and this was called that night that we all have to get on and move on to Stalag 3A. Now, what am I going to do with all I have? I made sure I buried everything in my bag and covered it up, and for that night we took on, it was a cold wintry night, and we went on this march. In the middle of the night, I was unable to walk any further, So lo and behold, I fell on the ground. I says, I don't care if they shoot me, let them do what they want, but I can't walk anymore. And luckily for me, plus several other Americans, they called the crank wagon came around, and then one of the boys, which I just met in the last year and a half, he was the one who picked me up and threw me on a wagon with all my equipment. And we rode on the wagon for about 8 days. And as we drove every day and came through nighttime, they would put us in a police building with there, and it kept us there to sleep at night, get up in the morning, get back in the wagon, and kept driving till it was about eight to 10 days that we did this driving on a wagon, which was about 80 kilometers from 3B to Stalag 3A, which was in Luckenwalde. Now the question is, now we got to Stalag 3A, and our wagon with all the sick that we call sick had to be inspected. Now the problem comes, what happens now with all my film camera and equipment? So I noticed before me how the guards was inspecting all the equipment that they had. There was a 2x8 table. On one side of the table was one German, on the other side of the table was the other German guard, and they asked us to put everything on the table for inspection. Now, how could I put my camera equipment on the table? So I just took out the clothing and food and put that on the table and held my musette bag by the strap at the edge of the table, hanging below the table, and I walked up to the guard. As soon as I saw the guard, I got a pack of cigarettes out of my pocket, put it in the palm of his hand, and he told me, come on, move on, move on. By the time I got at the end of the table, I put my coat and food article over the bag and all, and walked out. And then they brought us to the barrack that we were going to stay. Fortunately, from that period of time, which was in late January, we had no shakedowns at that particular camp of Stalag 3A. If I had any kind of a shakedown then, I would not know what to do with all this camera and pictures and negatives that I had. Fortunately, that didn't happen. So it was on April 22nd or 23rd that the Russians were coming. They came through our camp, and the night before, all the Germans disappeared. Now, when the Germans all disappeared, I felt kind of somehow secure that my equipment were never confiscated, taken away in any way. So what happened now? How am I going to get back to the American lines? Fortunately, the American ambulances came to relieve the sick that were in I forgot the name of the what they call a hospital in Germany. And what happened? While I was at the Stalag 3A, I was dealing with the French because they like American cigarettes, and I requested if they went and stole a German truck, an open truck, several Frenchmen's, and they decided how to get back to the American lines is when the convoy of these American ambulances came, we tailgated the convoy of American ambulances because they knew their way to get back to the American lines. So we drove that particular day up to the American lines. No sooner we got to the American lines, I jumped off and contacted the American MPs and asked the American MPs what would they, if there is a signal photo company nearby. Lo and behold, there was one. We got off, we went to the signal photo company that was there, told them who we were. There's this Roland Chatham, who was also a photographer with me. He got caught at the Bulge. I met him in that Stalag 3B. So we drove with the French in a truck following the convoy, and the American in charge of this photo company that was in the American lines he tried to get us back to the States, which was impossible. So what they finally did, got us to back to France, and then we went to the staging area in Le Havre, France, and we waited there, were taken care of by the American troops for several weeks, feeding us, have food from morning till night to feed us and getting us ready to be shipped to America. In a period of time, I still had film and camera. I took pictures of all these procedures and whatnot and accumulated, and as well as when we got on ship to come back to the States, I also had a camera there, and I took these pictures and all. And I got back to the States and called my home and all, and that's how I had my musette intact there with all the camera equipment, pictures and all the negatives. Now what happened then? When I got home, we received a letter inviting all American POWs of the New York City area to a dinner by the YMCA. I went to that dinner and seen John Burkhart, which was the public relation man of the YMCA, which he took charge of the Yankee Kriege book that was made. And during the dinner that we had there, I went up to him and I told him, I got a collection of pictures. Hi, he says, what pictures can you have? I says, John, you'll be surprised the pictures I got. So he couldn't understand it. So we made a luncheon appointment, one after another. When I seen the pictures, what I had, he couldn't believe it. That's how they produced the Yankee Kriege book, and they published 50,000 copies. And at that time, Colonel Greening, he was fortunate enough, so I hear later on, that he got quite a bit of artifacts that they were building in the German. The Americans were building in Germany while as prisoners. He got that, fortunately, how he got that, much of this artifacts back to England, from England to the States. And that's why YMC had a tour of the POWs with all these artifacts, and they distributed these 50,000 books. Now, we want to leave it there for a while to think.
Sure, let's go back. Let's go back a minute and bring you up so that you can go. Now, what did you do in life before you became a member of the Signal Corps and came into the United States Army? What kind of work did you do?
Kind of work. I was, at that time, I was doing jewelry business, working in a jewelry store. But how I got interested in photography, when in high school, I was taking pictures in a high school and doing the development all for high school newspaper. But that didn't qualify me so much to get into the photo school. After I spoke myself deaf, dumb, and blind to the lieutenant in charge of the photo school that I desperately want to get into the photo school, and he finally agreed and made me get into the photo school.
And this was when you were inducted into the armed forces first, right?
When I got, I got inducted, then I went.
Okay, and then you went to the photographic school?
Right.
And where was that?
In Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, the photographic school was in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. From there, we were assigned to the 162nd Signal Photo Company in Little Rock, Arkansas.
All right. Now, did they give you then instruction on what sort of combat photography should do?
No. The idea, go out and take pictures, take everything and anything that would be useful to the government.
Mm-hmm.
We had no authority and unlimited amount of picture taking. At that time, we had a 35 millimeter camera. We had an 8 millimeter cassette load movie camera, doing that type of work, and while in Africa prior to capture.
Mm-hmm. And then when you went with the Signal Corps outfit, and you went in and you probably landed where, around Casablanca?
No, we landed in Algiers.
In Algiers.
We landed in Algiers. It was fortunate we were the first wave going into Algiers. Fortunately, there was no resistance. We landed in Algiers, and there no evidence of any Germans.
Mm-hmm.
The combat was rough, was the boys that landed in Oran.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed in Algiers got our photo unit together, and from November 8th till February 14th, that's all I was doing, taking pictures in Africa of anything and anything that would be of useful to the government. Or the lieutenant would assign me to one unit, and from one unit to another, and stay there. And if there's any activity, to take pictures and get them back to the lieutenant. They fly back to London, and they did whatever they want with it.
What was your rank then?
And when I got into Africa, I was ranked as a sergeant.
All right, and the Battle of Kasserine Pass was the first large tank battle of World War II,
Right,
as far as the Americans were concerned,
Right.
anyway. And basically, I think we lost that battle.
Right.
And that's where you're captured,
Right.
right? Okay, now let's start you back as you go. The German soldiers take you to their first staging area,
Right.
and in time you wind up in Germany,
Right.
right? But how long, well, first you went to Italy, you said, right?
Italy.
Yeah, and you flew to Italy.
Flew Italy from Africa out of Ju-52. We went to Sicily. They refueled, and they flew us to Capua, outside of Naples.
Outside of Naples.
Right.
Okay, and then from there you go by train, I take
Yeah,
it?
boxcars.
Okay, well, all right,
Correct.
like boxcars on a train, and they wind up finally in this first prison camp that you
Was
go to.
it was Stalag 7A, which was outside Munich.
Mm-hmm.
From there, and then after a few months, they opened up the new camp because they had too many Americans. That's when we went to 3B.
Okay, and then 3B, you started your photographic work.
When we got the Red Cross spots, like
Okay.
my blessing was that I was a non-smoker.
Mhm.
If I was a smoker, this could never been done, because all the GIs that got parcels from home or Red Cross, they smoked every cigarette they were able to lay their hands on.
But you hoarded yours. You hoarded them and didn't smoke.
Oh, hell no.
Okay.
I use it for bartering purpose.
All right. And the bartering purpose that you started is with this one, you'd mentioned that you had a specific guard that you did this
For
through.
the illicit work.
Mhm.
They at times use other guards where we used to barter. The excuse was for barter from bread, which at times we were able to get a kilo of civilian bread for 2 packs of cigarettes.
Mhm.
And that was heavily rationed bread.
Mhm.
And it's marvelous how the baker in town was able to deny the civilian their ration of bread, and was able to sell it to the guard, possibly for a pack of cigarettes or so, and the guard will keep a pack of cigarettes for himself and give us the loaf of 1 kilo of civilian bread for 2 packs of cigarettes.
Angelo, how old was this guy? Was he a man in his 60s?
In the late 60s. He didn't care whatever happened to him.
Yeah, and my experience generally with them was at that point that the guards were all quite old people.
Well,
Later on, we got a lot of very young guards.
even not only old guards, they also had wounded soldiers that were pulling guard duty.
Mm-hmm.
And they took the risk, because if they ever got caught trading, they would be sent to the Russian front.
And that was the worst fate of all.
That's one thing they didn't want to do. And it's fortunately that there was never one American that ever got any guard in trouble, because it would have been worse for us as well as for them.
Mm-hmm. Now, Angelo, when you started to take these pictures, right, you had to conceal it somewhere. You mentioned that it was at your waist level, right?
What, the camera?
The camera.
Right.
So that you could actually shoot without.
Right.
But where would you store the film and stuff?
This was all, the film, I can't store it in the ground,
Mm-hmm.
because it would get mildew. I keep them all concise in one little package like, and no sooner we heard rumors, the guards put it on guard, because if we got caught and someone snitched which guard did it, they would get in trouble and we would be punished. So what happens, if they heard any kind of a rumor there's going to be a shakedown, they would come and inform us that there's going to be a shakedown this afternoon. So many of us had the opportunity to dispose of what you're not supposed to have.
So you got all this stuff from the guards, and you would trade back and forth with them, and they'd bring you the developed film.
Right.
Right. So to develop it, you needed a developer, as you said, And you assume that he gave him some cigarettes
Yeah,
to
that,
do
well,
with
that,
other.
what they did with it, it doesn't concern me in any way, but everyone got paid, and the commodity it was using was cigarettes.
Mhm.
But how I befriended the guard, I forgot to mention, that at one time I got I wrote to my home, and my brother was home then, and I told him, I am a crazy smoker the way I was back home, and send me as much cigarettes, cigars, tobacco, whatever you got, because I'm crazy, just mail it to me. My brother was clever enough, he read between the lines, he's not smoking, he's using it for a purpose.
Mhm.
And when I got the cigars, whoever got any kind of cigarettes, tobacco, or cigars from home, very few got cigars. They made sure they smoked them all.
Mhm.
They didn't give it to anyone.
Mhm.
But I walked by, and that's how I saw this elderly man, and trying to befriend him. And I would say, V. Gates, he says, guns good. I would get a cigar out of my pocket, throw it over the fence, and he takes the cigar. And he tells me the following day, he goes to the barrack and he sees the other guards, that he's smoking a cigar, and they're so envious. Well, where the dickens is this man getting these cigars? And he says he was really enjoying that cigar. Well, he has to produce for the cigar, and sure enough, he produced.
Mhm. Did you notice, the last time you saw them would have been in that prison camp when you had to walk on and move to the next prison
I
camp?
never saw him anymore.
Never saw him anymore.
Never saw him anymore.
Now, when you do this march, as I recall, the prison camp I was in, we were never moved. We were fortunate, we stayed there all the time. We would get in people that had come from other camps towards the end of the war, right? But when you went on this march, right, you were actually driven rode in cars for a while?
No, everybody had to walk.
That's what I thought, okay.
I complained, I was sick. It was one time with my bag and the equipment, I had the clothing. I didn't give a hoot if they killed me or not. I just couldn't walk. I
Mhm.
just couldn't walk.
Mhm.
And the good Lord watched over me, how the boys picked me up and threw me on a wagon. And they would, the man who was driving, the German, he was tickled pink that he had a wagon. And he tells the boys, whether you're sick or not sick, you better look sick. Otherwise, he has to give up and he has to walk all the way back to the camp.
Mhm.
So that's how we drove all the way back. And it was just fortunate how there was about 8 or 10 of us that we called Crunk that drove all the way back.
Mhm. And that was after you'd been in prison camp for a little over 2 years, right?
Right, right.
Okay. Now, let's go back to prison camp. We were taking all these pictures from. You were just taking pictures of everyday activity at the.
What activities transpired in the camp?
That would be the playing ball.
Whether they played ball, whether they get online to get the bucket of water. We didn't have no hot water available to us. Everything had to be done with cold water.
Mhm.
You had to shave with cold water. And now the kitchen used to heat these huge vessels of water.
Mhm.
And at times where the Germans would distribute sort of jam, we accumulated, each one managed to get a can, you know, like a 5-gallon can, and use that can to get hot water in there,
Mhm.
do their clothes washing, or wash themselves, a bath and everything else, and we kept out, well, there was no facilities for bath.
You
So-
never, in all that period of time, you never had a bath,
I never had a bath.
not even a shower.
If you went to get a shower, I was afraid to leave all my equipment out, and what would happen if I don't come back, then
Mhm.
they'd be exposed.
So you forego the shower.
I forgo to make sure that I had this, the forbidden equipment under control
Mhm.
at all times.
Mhm. Now, you said, and there were also performances put on by the
Well, we
prisoners,
had a
right?
tremendous performance in theaters. Well, the theater shots was entirely different than taking exterior pictures. At exterior pictures, you could shoot at a fast pace where there's no standing still. But the nicest thing, all these theater shots that I've taken, they were all time shots. I marvel, looking back, how each and every POW cooperated. When it comes to picture taking, I don't care who it is, whether officers or whatnot, they all give you the cooperation. But surprised, they never asked me for a print. Well, I never informed them that I was getting the film developed. Because I don't know, if I get him developed, someone may try to do it himself. He's the one who may get caught, and then that would be the end of me getting pictures developed.
So the prints that you got back, you kept in your own possession?
The prints and the negatives, I was more concerned with the prints and negatives. What's one fellow did later on, managed, you see, pictures could come from home, and what the prints come from home and go to the front office, they get these prints and stamp in back of it the proof, saying censored. So if they see a picture that's stamped censored, the German guard, whoever comes there, won't take that away from you. So someone, I don't know who it was.
He made you a stamp?
He made it out of the heel of a shoe. Made a rubber stamp that said the proof. Where they got it and whatnot, I don't know. And I got two pictures at home, stamped proof, and you know it's a theater picture. And that you could keep it on your possession. If the guard sees it, they don't know what it is. They see it's proof, they don't confiscate it.
All right, and what else went on in the camp? You had books, you had reading material, right?
We got
Came from the Y?
We got tremendous amount of books from the YMCA. What was nice, at the beginning, the Red Cross parcels came in wooden crates, boxes. It's, I would say, was it 8 inches or 8 inches width and 8 inches high, maybe about a foot and a half long, and used that there to build the backdrop of the chapel. And at the same time, stacked these boxes one on top of the other and made them a library. And we built our own library.
Right. Now, as I recall, in those boxes was powdered milk, right?
Right.
Clim cans, right?
Yeah, clim
You
cans.
used the clim cans, did
Oh,
you?
definitely.
And what'd you do with the clim cans?
Well, that's where they made, later on, it took quite some time, I don't know where it came, that they made what we call the blowers. And with the blowers, a contraption of the cans, and making a place where to burn, and you get this ersatz coal that they had, put it in there, and you'd be surprised where you could heat a little food, whatever you want, or heat some hot water, and you cook yourself a warm meal. We had no such thing as a warm meal by the Germans. We got what they had, their black bread was anywhere from 4 men on a loaf to as much as 8 men on a loaf of bread. And when that was cut, you ought to see how each and everyone seen that that loaf was cut evenly, that they got their proper share. We got quite a bit of boiled potatoes, 6 or 7 small size boiled potatoes with the bread, maybe a little tiny kind of piece of meat, whatever it may be. I don't know what it could be, and that was the supper.
That was supper.
At lunchtime, we had what they called a half bucket of soup that was boiled in the kitchen, and you get a clam can, like you scoop a can, and each one got a clam can full of hot water with rutabaga, whatever it may be, and that was lunch.
And what was breakfast?
Breakfast, maybe you get the ersatz coffee, just hot water. If we had when the Red Cross parcels came, we wanted hot water, and we used our own soluble coffee, or whatever you had.
That was in the Red Cross parcel. Right. Now, at one point, I know in our camp, the Red Cross parcel stopped coming, and that with us was roughly, let's see, got to go back in dates, roughly towards the end of 44, the beginning of 45. Did you continue to get Red Cross?
On and off.
Yeah.
On and off. At times you had to get 2 men in a Red Cross parcel, sometimes 3. But according to the Geneva Convention, we're supposed to get 1 box per person per week. If that was there, that would have been excellent. But times didn't come, whether they were pilferage with these cars coming in with these Red Cross parcels, God only knows. But whatever got through, got to us, that was the blessing.
Now, when the Red Cross parcel stopped coming,
Then there was trouble.
yes, as I recall, we were very hungry during that period of time. And at that point, then, how'd you make out? What'd you do?
Just
figure out
try to
food?
survive on what you had.
Yeah, what you have.
What you had. Whatever we had, if we had any few cans and the food, we would just hoping and praying that the day would come that we'd be liberated.
Did you grow vegetables at all?
No, that we couldn't do.
You couldn't do.
No,
See, in our camp we did, we grew vegetables.
no, we couldn't do that there.
In fact, I grew tomatoes.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
In fact, I think I'm the only person that ever was able to grow tomatoes that far north in Germany.
No.
But, and the reason for that was, I told you a little bit of my story, one of the guys that was with us in the compound was, like many people, a farmer. He lived in Ohio. And he made out of these cigarettes, the Polish cigarettes, which we call Polski Kopolskis, and he made a paste out of them. And that paste he put in and he used it both as fertilizer and to take care of the bugs that would come around. The German guards used to marvel on it. They didn't know what a tomato was. And they couldn't figure out how this American guy had figured out a way to grow tomatoes back in the zone.
One nice thing I like, my particular camp was an elderly group of Americans. They're not, say, the 18, 19-year-old. They could have been in their 20s. And they all had different kind of experience. That's where you had an electrician, we had a carpenter.
Right.
It's unbelievable from all walks of life. And it's marvelous how whoever got interested in keeping themselves occupied, they survived. We had a few boys that they couldn't take it. They went off their rocker. I mean, they had to be taken away in straitjackets. Well, they had, because they didn't want to keep themselves occupied in any way. There's others that read books continuously, and then there was cards came from home. They played cards.
Right.
And one thing I didn't say, when on the Red Cross parcels that we had in a box, in the nighttime, we were infested with little mice. And they were all over the place, trying to get into your Red Cross box, whatever they could do. So you just cover yourself, try to see, and let the mice do whatever they want, let it go. At one night, one fellow had a brilliant idea, how we're going to catch some mice. He was able to get like a toothpick in the shape of four, and put a piece of cheese at the end of the four, like, and take our benches that we set down, upside down, and put the four underneath the bed, the bench. And if the mice would go and nibble, the bench would fall down. One night we caught about 22 little mice
With this contraption.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's unbelievable.
Now, in the barracks, were you in a barracks with how many men at one time?
Anyways, from 150 to 200, 250.
And were you stacked three on?
Three on.
And what was your mattress like?
Straw, that's about all you can take, or whatever you had.
Did it get cleaned at any time that you were there over the period of time? Was it always the same straw?
Who's going to clean?
Well, that's why I'm asking you.
No, we never had that clean.
Yep.
And we had one urinal for the 150 to 200 men. If you have to go move your bowels, then you have to go to the outhouse, which was a couple 100 feet away. Whether it was cold night, winter night, and all, you just had to go there.
But how many men all in all were in that prison camp?
As much as 5,000.
And of course, the population kept growing as the war went on, right?
As much as they could possibly fit in that particular camp.
Now, you were there during the Battle of the Bulge then,
Yeah.
at that time. You were in that camp.
Yeah,
Right.
that's where they brought many of the boys from the Battle of Bulge. That's where I met my photographer friend that we landed together, and it happens to be right up there with a camera. Roland Chatham. He was wounded in a bulge, and he came into the camp. I was surprised to see him after several months. He went through the Battle of Italy and everything else. Then he went back to the States. When he came back to the States, he went to Astoria, Long Island, and he couldn't stand it, the way they were criticizing about taking pictures, that there was movement and anything else. I like to see the boys in Astoria.
Oh, they didn't
Good.
like the pictures that he
They
brought back.
criticized, they thinking with the 155 going off or the 105 going off that they could hold their camera still. There was vibration there and everything else. He couldn't take it. He volunteered to go back to the war front, and that's where he got caught at the Bulge.
Now, when you finally moved from the camp, and you start on this trek, and you said you were you got into a cart rather,
Right.
and was able to go along, and at that point you went to another cell lot, 3A, 3B, which
From,
one is?
from 3B to 3A.
From 3B to 3A.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that-
on Luckenwalde.
Yeah.
That's about 80 kilometers south of Berlin.
Yeah, now is that, when, in January or February of?
January.
Of 45? right now?
45.
Okay. And so you're there now in January of 45,
And we got liberated on April 22nd.
and you
That's
get,
when the Russians came
yeah,
through.
get liberated by the Russians, as they come
The
through.
frontline Russian troops going to the Battle of Berlin.
Okay. Now, what was it like with the Russians?
We had very little dealings basically with them. They were too anxious to go on. In fact, I got pictures of it where they go right through our camp, and they were more anxious to go into the Battle of Berlin than anything else. Well, that didn't bother us as long as we were all free. I mean, we did whatever we can, and many of the boys decided to take off and walk to the American lines. Many took off. I couldn't possibly walk. How the heck could I walk with all the equipment I got if I want to get this home? And luckily it was for the Frenchmen. I don't know, the good Lord was watching me all the way. Here I am with this equipment. I can't carry it. How am I going to get back to the American line? That's when I get the American convoy, the lazaret. That's the hospital where the sick were in. The convoy American ambulances came to relieve these sick and take them back to the American lines. Where they went, I don't know, but we followed the convoy to get back to the American lines.
All right, so actually those would have been the American Third Army under General Patton, wouldn't they, probably?
It had to be.
Yeah, okay, so you're now back in the American lines, right? And they slowly move you over, you get back then and wind up in France.
Right.
And you go up to Le Havre, and you're either in Camp Lucky Strike or Chesterfield or one of
Lucky
those.
Strike.
You were in Lucky Strike, all
Lucky
right.
Strike.
And now you're waiting for transportation to come back to the United States.
Right.
Okay, and that you're gonna do by boat?
Yeah.
Okay, and about when was that? Was it early?
I got back to the States on June 13th,
On June 13th, you're back in the States.
St.
okay.
Anthony's Day.
Well, that's appropriate.
That's why I remember.
Okay, did you sail into New York Harbor?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got pictures of that showing.
Okay, you
New
sail
York
into
Harbor.
New York Harbor, and I imagine that was quite a moment for you.
You have no idea.
I do have an idea.
It was a pleasure to come back to the good old US.
Yeah, I was quite disappointed when I got back because we came into Boston.
Oh,
And
no.
I've always felt cheated because of that, of
No,
never having that
When
opportunity.
New York Harbor.
New York Harbor, and at that point then, you go where, to Governor's Island, where did you wind up?
No, I was a sick bay when I was in that ship. They sent me, I think, to Tilton General Hospital in Jersey somewheres,
Yeah.
and they checked me out, and I was more anxious to go home. I complained that I'm not sick. I'm feeling well. I said I get back home. I go see my own doctor, get taken care of myself. So I did. They sent me home. They gave us a 74-day furlough. That's when I decided. I got married on my furlough.
Okay. Your family was then living in New York City?
I was living in New York City.
Well, as I recall, from what you've told me, your family was in the jewelry business, right?
No, we got in the jewelry business after.
After that, okay. So at that point, they're living in New York City?
Yeah.
Okay, and you go back to the family and then you get married?
Then I got married.
Same girl you left behind?
I mean,
Same girl you left behind
Yeah.
when you left?
we got engaged. She waited 50 months.
Oh, you were engaged before you left? Okay.
And our parents didn't approve of us getting married, which later on I considered they did the right thing to stop us from getting married, because what would happen if you come back wounded and all, and you leave a wife with a child or something back? She said, speaking to one of the priests, who was a Monsignor Goodwine. He was associated with the Catholic Church in Mamaroneck.
Yes, he was.
Monsignor Goodwine.
Monsignor Goodwine indeed was.
He's the one who convinced us to wait, and he's the one who married us 50 months later.
He did?
Yeah.
So you've had a long association with Mamaroneck.
With Father Goodwine,
What, Father Goodwine?
he was marvelous to us. He convinced me and convinced my wife, if the good Lord wants it that way, you'll get married. 50 months later, when we got married, and there was Monsignor did it.
He did the service?
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right. And now, So you settled in Yonkers, or did you settle in New
No,
York?
so it was in New York.
Okay. Okay.
And at that time, we decided to open up a business with my brother because he was in the jewelry business then, and he was kind of working, so we opened up our own plant.
Mm-hmm.
And
And-
have been in the jewelry business for the last 50 years, 52
Mhm.
years.
Now, there came a time when you moved to Yonkers, though, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
When I moved when I mean, after getting married about 5 years, something like
Okay.
that, 5, 6 years.
And then you lived in Yonkers for,
About 38 years in Yonkers.
in Yonkers. All right,
Yeah.
so let's now cover some of that stuff. You now have all these films. You've been to the meeting of the ex-prisoners of war.
Right.
Has come the book that the Y put out, the one that I had mentioned and
Right.
you had mentioned. All right, now what happens with the pictures after that?
Oh, I went to Time Life, trying to get the pictures in Time Life. Well, at the Time Life, had them on the desk for 4 weeks of when they're gonna produce a weekly magazine, Life. Being young at that time, I went to Time Life editor and says, you don't wanna reproduce my pictures, give me my pictures back, you don't need them. I got the pictures, that's when I buried them.
You buried
In my house, in my office, and buried there, let them stay there.
Okay.
Oh, about 38 years later, Time Life is producing a book. They want to produce a book, Victory in Europe. And they, in the National Archives, the YMCA book was there. And in the back, you could see a picture of me with the name of the business was in. They called me from Virginia and requested, am I the person in back, and the pictures that are in the Yankee Creek are yours? He says, yes, we are going to produce a book of Victory in Europe. A portion of that is going to be of prisoners of war. So would you mind if we sent someone to look at the pictures? So they finally did. They sent this fellow, Peter Collins, who traveled the world gathering pictures of prisoners of war. And he came up, and finally they selected about 50 pictures that they want to produce. And they got so much information on prisoner of war that they decided to put a book specially called Prisoner of War, World War II, Time Life. 38 years later, they seeked me out. They want the pictures. 38 sooner, they didn't want to have nothing to do with it. And they picked 14 pictures, I think it's 14 pictures, and they reproduced them in this Time Life Prisoner of War book. In fact, 6 of them are double-page spread. Well, they made this double-page spread, and they said I got the best negatives of anyone in that book, and I got the large, Peter Collins is the one who told me I got the largest collection of the book. And in Time Life was very good. They paid me for the book. They also made a copy, strictly a Prisoner of War World II in German. I got a copy of that book that they made. And well, that somehow started the ball rolling, where I produced and was writing quite a bit. This was in the late 80s. And no sooner between, say, 82 and 83, that's when they came out with the book, I started to do some corresponding with someone about these pictures. From that day, I wrote to one and wrote to another, and what happened, back when President Reagan was president, and he went to Russia to see about the conference that they had there, that this Russian dentist that was not, hello Eva. This Russian dentist cornered this Charles Carrot, and he says he has a story he wants the Americans to know. He wants to thank the Americans for all the food that they gave to the Russian soldiers. Russian soldiers did not belong to the Geneva Convention, and they were they actually were on a starvation diet, practically. I get the kick on this Charles Carroll story that you hear, where this doctor that was in our particular camp, he said the Russians, when a soldier died, and they would stand him up for roll call, because by standing up for roll call, they could get his ration. And it was a pity. Now, this Charles Carroll got in touch, this Russian dentist, told him about this Bill Jarima. Bill Jarima was, his family came from Russia, and he was the interpreter for this doctor. I don't recall his name, but this Russian dentist. And he told him he wants to see if he could get, Carroll could get back and thank these American boys that helped him. So when they got a hold of Bill Jarima told Charles Carroll, we have a fellow named Spinelli, got pictures of the Russians. At that time, I was at New York State Convention of POWs. They called me from New York, that they want to see me in New York. Our office was in New York City. So he says, come Monday morning into NBC. So I knew what they wanted about the Russian. So I brought back several pictures of the Russians. One was the Russian soldier that went over the warning wire to pick up a cigarette. He was shot dead by just picking up a cigarette, passing the warning wire. And now
You're talking about with Charles Carroll.
Charles Carroll, he called me, and I went to his studio, and he interviewed me for about 3 hours, Charles Carroll. And he used the picture of the Russian, he used the picture of the Russian soldier who died, the Russian standing on line, and the guard. 3 pictures which gave him tremendous credence to him. It was just strictly publicity. He showed it on CBS about a half a dozen times, a different period of time. In fact, this Bill Jarima, that year that he put out the first TV, this Bill Jarima decided to get in touch with this Russian dentist. And what he did, him and his wife flew to Russia and went to meet this Russian dentist. And that the second time Carroll shows the picture, he shows that this Bill Jarima meeting the Russian dentist, and they met together and all. That's where he built that into the story that he did.
I want to know, did you finish the war as a sergeant?
Yeah, couldn't do nothing else after sergeant. I was anxious to get home and forget the war.
And I would like to have everybody see your wonderful medal.
This one here?
Yes. Could you put, that's it, so we can have a nice shot of that
Well, this,
wonderful medal. Go ahead.
it's the 5th highest award. It was given to me for doing photographic work prior to capture. And unknown to me is I found this out when I got back to the States. It was given to my mother.
Isn't that wonderful? Your mother got to see what an important person you are.
She got the medal then. Now what I have done, and everyone says so. I mean, there's quite a bit of stories, additional more that I could go on. I was up at Yale University, and at that time they made a tremendous buy on a special library, and it happened to be the Spinelli Library that was hidden during the war in Switzerland. And being as a family tradition, I thought there may be some association, which there is. Then I went to see the charge of the library there, and spoke to him about it and all. He was very too. He wanted me to donate the pictures to Yale because they have a tremendous historian background now for prisoners of war. Well, they didn't want to do nothing for me. That's the idea.
Yes.
The book.
Yeah,
You know,
as you can see, this is the Yankee Creedy book.
As you can see,
And
where
there-
you see the name.
There's Angelo as a younger man. Okay.
Well, I have to tell you that
the amount of film will soon run out, or the tape will soon run out, and I would love to have heard more, except that you've got things to do tomorrow. I'm sure you've got things to do this afternoon, and so I'm going to have to ask you
Well, I think what you should
to
also
wind up.
do is wind up, we'll be glad to, how it got to the government now, to the Park Service, how that all came about, Angelo.
Oh, well,
And Andersonville, I think that would be of
Well,
interest to it.
at the various conventions we went, I always saw a representative of the Anderson Museum, and I told them I have quite a number of pictures, and they somehow found out that I have quite a big collection of pictures. And I give all this credit of this exhibit now to this Fred Sanchez, of the curator of the Anderson Museum. I was conversing for a couple of years with him back and forth, and talking, never telling him anything about donating or doing anything. So at one, I found out I'm getting older. I don't know what I'm going to do. What am I going to do with these negatives? Sanchez got me in a weak spot. He says, would you do me a favor? Send me about a dozen negatives. I want to make them on discs for you. So I says, he sounds so sincere and honest. Let me give him the pictures, the negatives. So he put them on discs and sent me this one disc. Then after he made the one disc, a month or two went by, and he had to get these grants from the state capital of Georgia to get this money to do all this here. So then I says, what am I going to do? Let me mail him all the negatives, and so he could put them on discs. And he got the money from one year to another. He got sufficient money that he put them all on disc, each and every negative that I gave him. And he took it all upon himself to make this exhibit, never telling me what I want to do with the negative at all. It came the day that this reporter, you got to get the living, the newspaper article. They got the reporter who made the article about this exhibit. He was unaware. And he started it all.
Oh, yeah.
This Hubner here, Henrik, I mean Bill Henrik, of the Atlantic Journal-Constitution, he interviewed me and all in order to get this story written. And I told him, Sanchez been working so hard to make this exhibit. I think what I'm going to do is, after he introduces me, I'm going to donate the negatives to him. He said, no, you shouldn't do that. Let him know in advance that you're going to donate them. That's how he introduced the article of the negatives been donated to the museum. So that's how and now I know they're in good hands, and the negatives are going to be well taken care of. And they went out and spent over $50,000 to make this exhibit. When a man spends that type of money without my approval, he says you have complete control over the negatives of anything else. But at least I know they're in a safe place. They're going to be well secured in every which way. And he will make no one even see the negative of the control that they have. He had all these discs made, so anyone who wants a copy or whatnot, they could get the disc, and he makes enlargements. You get he says you can make an enlargement as much as 4 by 5 feet from these discs that he has. So I owe it all to Fred Sanchez to get this exhibit going. And he convinced me, and together I did, and others told me I did the best thing, that they're going to be well preserved. The Signal Corps Museum wanted the negatives, Air Force Museum wanted the negatives, Carlisle Barracks wanted the negatives, Yale wanted the negatives, but none of them wanted to do anything for me.
And all of them can get a disc. Now that the discs are made, they can get all of your negatives, from one of those discs, and your regular negatives are now in a special place.
Right.
And if anybody wants to see some of all these pictures, they can come to the Mamaroneck Library from Sunday on and see them right here in Mamaroneck.
Yeah,
And beyond that,
There's 92 pictures out of 400
that are
on the
here.
library.
And Angelo, are you still taking pictures?
Now, I'm not in that well, is feeling well, able to, but I would like to, well, I will continue to, I take a few pictures in between, but I'm not up to it as much as I would like to.
I think you
But-
made a major contribution for 2 years, don't you?
Fantastic. What, but truthfully, I owe it all to Sanchez. His devotion and how he convinced his superiors and whatnot, I don't know.
But I
What?
think you showed the initial devotion, carrying those things around for 27 months.
And I know they're there for eternity.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well, I can say as an ex-POW, all ex-POWs have great stories because of what happened to these. But yours is one of the best stories I've ever heard of anybody that was a POW. That really is an incredible, incredible tale.
and there's other incidents where I can't go into detail and whatnot. I even tried, how, we met about 5 years ago, the German lieutenant, cut. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Did you tell him how you hide the camera?
I'm glad you know how
Did
to
you tell
do
him how
that.
you could hide the camera?
I did,
Did you tell him that
I
story?
hope I did.
Yes.
The story how you hid the camera because of your legs, because you were,
Oh, that's when I got shot.
yeah.
Oh, you didn't mention that.
No, he didn't mention that. I tell you what, when are you next coming back?
I'm
Oh,
not.
amazing. This is your shot.
Hey,
You never can tell.
health-wise, it's pretty rough for me.
Yes, I
Because
understand.
luckily last night, luckily we were able to go to the,
Emergency room in New Rochelle Hospital.
I forgot all the equipment for my nebulizer.
Oh,
I needed I thought I had a complete package, a new one. In fact, 2 pieces were missing. So how am I going to get this nebulizer, the equipment for using my breathing? So I called Ed Simon, what are we going to do? He says, I'll be coming right over. And then I told him, well, let's go to the hospital. I know they gotta have it.
yes.
I went to the hospital, and she was so nice those days. She gave me 2 of them, didn't even charge me for it.
That's good.
So I'm able to do my breathing test. I did my breathing test before I came here.
Well, I must say, it's been delightful to have you here. I'm sorry we don't have more time. Sorry you don't have more time, but perhaps another time we'll get to see you again. If not, we're definitely
Yeah.
going to see you in all the photographs.
Are they gonna put it up by tomorrow?
They're
Yes.
yes, they're
It's
going to
gonna
be
be put up.
erecting it
gonna
tomorrow
be put up
morning,
tonight.
and it'll be in the lobby of the theater, so there's more room for it there.
After you do all the editing, the final copy,
Yes,
That
you
you-
definitely will get one. I promise, I promise, I promise. And your son lives in the neighborhood, not that far away,
it
so
took-
keep me up to it.
it took quite a bit,
Oh, you let me take a picture?
Yeah, take a picture.
I do have to take some shots.
And put that.
Yeah, leave that, that's fine, you hold it. Ah. Unfortunately, this piece of
Actually,
tape is
you see
only,
what you see here, this photo, this is my photo.
use that either as the beginning or the end. That's terrific.
And
Well, you guys have been great.
this photo is mine.
Yes, is that the guard tower? It is, isn't it? Where the Germans would stand up there with rifles?
That's a tower.
That's one of the guard towers.
Yeah.
And look on the back and you'll see Angelo as a young man.
Yeah, look at that.
That's in the
Still
Library,
got the head of hair.
Library of Congress, this book was in. That's where they did their research, Time Life, in order to get that there. That's when they called me.
I don't know what it is about you, but you spend a lot of time looking down. Look at this one and looking down. Look, see? And he's looking down at that one
He's
too.
looking down, yeah, he tends to look down, I guess, from his photograph.
To tell you the truth,
He's a modest man.
this was taken just a few days prior to invasion
Really?
of Algiers.
Where were you there? Were
On
you,
the, our Watia ship, is New Zealand ship sailing for the invasion.
you were on board a ship?
We had to make the invasion.
He's talking about the invasion in North
No,
North
I
Africa.
understand what he's talking about, because he was very
Well, the trouble
fortunate
is,
to be
we
captured
always
by
are-
Rommel's
I
army,
see, there's the Brit,
because
this
the others
here,
weren't so nice.
excuse me, this is the New Zealand crew. We used to eat together with the New Zealand crew. We used to stay on the top deck, so in case we could see any planes firing or whatever, we were there to take pictures.
Yeah, dangerous work, you know.
Most of the people would be downstairs
Yes.
instead of there taking
Eileen,
pictures.
I have one suggestion.
Okay.
When you prepare the final version,
Yeah.
there's, and I don't know in what box it's in, but there's the camera that he used.
Well,
Oh.
To take these pictures.
she has that on the lock and key.
Oh, she has it under lock and key? Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe you wanna
Good
see
idea.
Joan and
Because she
maybe
was
she'll-
worried about that.
Well, I'm going to be here to cover the opening tomorrow.
Okay.
So
What
I'll
time
talk
is
to you
that?
then.
So-
2:00.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Yeah. So I'll see you again tomorrow.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
Now I can say
I'll have
hello.
my,
Hi, Daddy.
do you need that?
What am I looking for? Oh, this, I'm sorry, what I'm holding.
You saw this.
Yeah.
And then Ken, we would like very much to make an appointment to have your history one of these days
Okay.
too. So, and
Just
since
give me
you're
a call.
local, you're brand new.
Yeah. Just give me a call.
But it was very nice of you to do this for us.
Pleasure, pleasure. All right.
Ah,
And
there
thanks for
you go.
coming, but thanks for arranging this thing.
Well, thank you very much.
All
No,
right.
all we have to do is,
Charles Corot kept me for 3 hours.
you know, Charles, I always
Very
liked
nice
what
man.
Charles
Very
Perrault
nice
does.
man.
You know, I loved his documentaries when he used to go all over the country doing things. And he's a very intelligent man too.
Yeah.
And so if he talked to you for 3 hours, he
He's a-
must have wanted to know a lot about
You're
you.
a wonderful interviewer.
Yes, he is, isn't he?
Yeah.
Nice man.
Yeah.
Oh, he's dead now. He died of cancer, didn't he?
He died.
He died.
Yeah. Very shortly after he
He
finished.
was a heavy smoker.
But you know something, I know people who are heavy smokers who
Mhm.
don't suffer anything. It's
Well,
hard to
Well,
tell.
he was a chain smoker.
Yeah,
While I was there was one cigarette after the other.
Oh,
One cigarette after the
that's
other.
rough. Yeah.